There's about a half hour until tip-off at Rep Arena, and noise is building outside of the Kentucky locker room. Inside, it's quiet as the team gathers for its prayer circle. Jaxson Robinson and Mark Pope line up next to each other as they have for 60-plus games. As they link hands, unexpected emotions interrupt Pope's usual pregame flow.
And so it just hit me a few games ago. I was like, oh my gosh, I've been standing next to Jax for a good 2.5 years now. And at some point after the season, I'm not gonna be able to do that anymore. And
the moment stuck with Pope well after the buzzer sounded on a November non-conference win. He brought it up with Jaxson a few days later.
He was talking about how he just doesn't know what he's gonna do when I'm gone. So that hit me a little bit. I don't know, it's just really cool knowing that I have a coach that I have that relationship with. That's something that I was looking for when I was younger.
Without it, Jaxson would not be in Lexington. He might not be playing basketball at all. Jaxson Robinson doesn't remember a time in his life without basketball. That's because he was born into it. Jackson's mother, aunt, and grandmother were all Americans. Jackson's grandmother, Nancy Robinson, was a star at Murray State College in Tishomingo, Oklahoma. Although she was responsible for scoring, Nancy had the heart of a defender, a feistiness she passed on to her daughters and Jaxson.
Really hard work and effort. So she's a scrappy player. Everyone said, tough defender, hard-nosed, just get in there, work hard. And that's the thing for him. She always is pushing him to, do the dirty work. She was a dirty work player.
She started her college career at Southwest Missouri State and transferred to Southeastern Oklahoma State, where she and her sister Crystal are now in the Hall of Fame. In her senior year, Brandy earned Division II All-American honors and helped lead the Savages to the Division II Women's National Basketball Tournament Finals.
I wasn't a great offensive player. I wasn't a great shooter, but one thing I could do was play defense.
How hard was it to score on Brandy? Ask her older sister, Crystal.
On the block was nothing I could do with her. And she was a good defender. Yeah. So she could guard me. So I couldn't.
Crystal Robinson was an All-American at Atoka High School and a 3-time NAIA First Team All-American and the 1996 NAIA National Player of the Year at Southeastern Oklahoma State, where she still is the all-time leader in points, rebounds, assists, and steals, and was drafted number 6 overall in the 1999 WNBA draft by the New York Liberty. In her rookie season, Crystal led the WNBA and made 3-pointers.
She's the same as me, shooter. Just shooting it from anywhere, really quick.
Crystal played her final 2 seasons with the Washington Mystics before retiring in 2007 to become an assistant coach. Now an assistant for the Chicago Sky, she has spent the last 17 years in the profession, coaching in the pros, college, and even at her old high school, Atoka. At every stop, she's always made time for her star pupil, her nephew, Jaxson.
Good hustle. Time out.
Jaxson was born on December 3, 2002, the only child of Brandy and James. From the start, it became clear he had his aunt's knack for scoring. When he was 2, Brandy got him a little Tyke stand-up basketball hoop.
And I put it together and I gave him the ball and he kind of looked at that ball for a second and then he just shot it with perfect form. And I immediately called my dad and I was like, you have to come see this.
At age 4, Jaxson started playing in a rec league. While most kids were still learning how to dribble, he was already firing off shots to the point that during one game, James called Brandy for help.
I wasn't at the game. His dad called me and said, he has only shot 3s the whole game. I don't know what to do. And I was like, when they call timeout, tell him to stop. Tell him to pass the ball and stop shooting 3s.
Brandy and Crystal cultivated Jackson's love for the game throughout his childhood, taking him to the gym for extra workouts and lessons. Learning the game from 2 women gave Jaxson a different perspective. Instead of focusing on speed and athleticism, they taught him the game from the ground up, putting special emphasis on fundamentals, form, and footwork. As Jaxson grew older, his aunt became more involved, coaching his travel team for 3 summers. Although Crystal had plenty to keep her busy, she seized the opportunity to toughen her nephew up. Having reached the pinnacle of the sport herself, she knew that she had to push him if he was going to do the same, even if he didn't always like it.
We had our moments, we had our arguments, but I think it all paid off in the end. I think it was really good for me.
When Crystal joined the Dallas Wings coaching staff, Jaxson came and practiced with the team one summer. It also opened his eyes to how physical basketball at that level is, a message his aunt continues to harp on to this day.
Just being aggressive, I think that was something that I had always struggled with as a kid, just trying to figure out, like I said, my game. But I think now just being a little bit more assertive, just offensively and defensively.
It's like 24/7. I was either at the high courts and the dirt courts. I took the rims off my bikes and knocked the spokes off of them, nailed them to trees. Like, basketball was all consuming for me, like almost like a sickness. Like, that's I tell people all the time. And I think Jaxson may have that too. Sometimes when I played, I was so focused on being great that sometimes it wasn't fun.
In high school, Jaxson established himself as the best player in Oklahoma and a top 40 four-star prospect in the 2021 class. In January 2020, he committed to Texas A&M, picking Buzz Williams' Aggies over Arkansas, Houston, Oklahoma State, and Tulsa. In May of that year, he decided to reclassify and head straight to College Station. Unfortunately, like so many people his age, he was robbed of a true freshman experience due to the pandemic.
It was tough. We weren't a great team. We were at the bottom of the SEC that year. Everybody kept getting COVID. We had to cancel like a whole bunch of games. We didn't play a lot of our games.
Because of all the outbreaks, Jaxson was isolated during most of his time at Texas A&M.
They just told me to keep fighting, keep going through it. And eventually, like, you're going to see light at the end of the tunnel. So
Jaxson entered the transfer portal in April 2021. A month later, he transferred to Arkansas to play for Eric Musselman, who recruited him out of high school. Less than a year later, he would be on the move again. Jaxson Robinson does not like to talk about Arkansas, specifically Eric Musselman. At SEC Media Day this past October, Arkansas beat writer Bob Holt asked Robinson about his time in Fayetteville.
Nah, I don't really have anything to say about Arkansas, to be honest, yeah.
Jackson's production increased slightly in Fayetteville. He played in 16 games, averaging 3.4 points and 10.2 minutes per contest. He scored a then-career high 14 points, including 3 three-pointers versus Elon, and played almost 32 minutes against Mississippi State, grabbing 7 rebounds.
I got a little bit of playing time that year, so I think it was really good just to get out on the floor, like you said, get some experience in the SEC.
Entering the transfer portal on May 12, 2022. The clock was ticking for him to find a third school in as many years.
Through all of that, I think the only time that I ever saw Jaxson get low and him to question himself as a player was when he left Arkansas. That was a really hard situation. How things went are not how I don't think they should have gone that way, and it was really hard for his mind to understand. You know, he's 19 years old, and that was probably the first time I ever heard him out loud question his ability to play basketball.
One of the calls the Robinsons took was from Mark Pope at BYU. The family liked his initial pitch, so they agreed to visit Provo. Both Jaxson and Brandy had the same thought when Pope and Cody Feger greeted them at the airport.
And I walked in, I was like, Jaxson, did you know he was this tall? And he was like, I think I read it, but he looks taller than 6'10".
I didn't realize he was that tall, so it threw me for a loop.
I'll never forget, he picked us up, he and Coach Feger picked us up from the airport, and we were going to go get something to eat immediately. And the thing I remember most about him is sitting in that car with the seat all the way to the back with his leg hooked up and just chit-chatting like it was the easiest thing for him. And he immediately makes you feel at peace and at home and really just comfortable.
Leaving the SEC for the West Coast Conference wasn't exactly the path Jaxson had in mind for his college career, but the more Pope talked, the more the Robinsons liked what they heard.
They had a plan, a well put together plan that we all thought that was like a really good idea. We knew that first year we were going to be in the WCC, but we knew we were transitioning to the Big 12.
It wasn't easy, especially early on. After his experiences at Texas A&M and Arkansas, it took Jaxson time to open up to his new coaches and teammates. It took even longer for him to trust them.
When he got to BYU, there was, in some ways, he was super broken, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like all of us are when we go through tough stuff. Like all of us, right? I'm sure he felt some real defensiveness and protectiveness, and certainly lack of trust in me, in the situation, in all of it, right? He never in a million years imagined that he was going to be playing at BYU, right? I don't think he had a ton of trust in his new teammates. Not he was playing with the greatest guys ever, but just because of experience, right? It's been really hard, and you don't fix that in a day. And so there were actually some points in the season where things got bad, like it got really ugly and bad.
My first year wasn't the best for me, so going into that second year, I felt like I needed something that could keep me sane when I'm not playing basketball. I didn't have any family or really any friends in Utah, so I thought that getting a dog might be a good option. So I got Astro back in Oklahoma off of Craigslist, and I had flew him back with me to Utah, and then ever since then, he's been my best friend.
The change in Jaxson was immediately noticeable.
That summer, after his first year, he did two things incredibly well. First, he was so intentional about going out of his way to build relationships with his teammates. The second thing he did was he had this incredible renewed focus on growing his game. It wasn't the first year that changed him or his trajectory forever. It was that summer.
After starting 30 games in his first year at BYU, Jaxson only started 6, thriving in his role as the sixth man. He became the first bench player in program history to lead the team in scoring, averaging 14.2 points in 26.5 minutes per game. He hit 81 three-pointers that season, an average of 2.5 per game. He made at least 1 3 in each of BYU's final 21 games, all while facing Big 12 competition. Jaxson had always been proficient offensively. Pope was most proud of the improvement he made on defense.
Here's the truth. I mean, I want to be super careful, but I can't really tell the story without telling the story. You know, there were times in his rookie year when I was like, when this game gets tough, Jaxson's probably not going to be on the floor, right? Mm-hmm. And now when the game gets tough, I'm like, that's the first guy I look to.
BYU made it to the NCAA tournament, but was upset by Duquesne in the first round. Jaxson scored 25 points in the 71-67 loss, just 3 points shy of his career high. Although his time at BYU was over, he had finally broken through.
I mean, it was huge, obviously. Changed my career. Like I said, I couldn't be more thankful for Coach Pope.
From there, the path seemed laid. On April 23, 2024, Jaxson declared for the NBA draft, finally headed toward his dream of being a professional. Little did he know there'd be one more detour. 11 days before Jaxson declared for the draft, Mark Pope was named the head coach at Kentucky. The one person not stunned by the hire? Jaxson Robinson.
To be honest, I had a feeling he was going to get it after Scott Drew turned it down. I had a feeling that Coach Pope was going to get it. And as soon as he got it, he had called me, which was really cool. I congratulated him.
Brandy was so excited for Pope and his family that she broke her own rules and called him immediately.
Oh my goodness. I was so happy for him because if you've met Coach Pope, even when he was at BYU, if you've ever had any conversations with him, you know that he absolutely loves the Wildcats. Like, he has the best stories to share, and it's something that means so much to him and to his family. So the minute I heard, and I try not to ever contact any of Jackson's coaches, the coaching staff, because, I mean, that's his thing to do. I immediately picked up the phone and called him, and I called Leanne, and I was just so happy and so proud for them because I think that they'll do great things here, and I know that means so much for him to be here leading this team.
Even though Pope was headed toward his dream at Kentucky and Jaxson towards his in the pros, Pope made it clear early on there was a spot for Jaxson in Lexington if he wanted it. When he declared for the draft, Jaxson also entered the transfer portal, a safety net should he want to return to college for a final year.
He gave me a hard time and just explained that he was still going to recruit me, but he understood the boundaries, and he wanted me to be able to go out and experience things for myself and see how it goes, but he wanted me to know that he still wanted me here.
Jaxson went to Los Angeles to train for the NBA Draft Combine. After the Combine, Jaxson continued to work out with teams and gather feedback on his game. The number one thing they said he could improve with another year in college? The same thing Brandy and Crystal had preached for years.
Defensively, that's been like my main focus all summer.
On the day of the deadline, May 29th, Jaxson worked out for the Milwaukee Bucks. He was trending as a second-round pick, and whether or not he would stay in the draft was the talk of the gym that afternoon.
I mean, it was really funny just being there and knowing that everybody was kind of waiting on my decision. But yeah, I didn't know until I got into the airport after the workout, and I made my decision there.
When he called his mother to tell her what he wanted to do, she was stunned. and secretly relieved.
When he called me from the airport, he'd left to work out with the NBA team. He was at the airport and he called me and said, I'm going to go back to school. I honestly was very shocked, but I tried to play it off because I really wanted another year of college basketball.
Decision made, Jaxson turned off his phone for the night and tried to get some rest. After seeing Kentucky fans speculate what he would do for weeks, he had an idea of the reaction the news would bring. Even then, after the report came out the next day and he turned his phone back on, he was taken aback. It was his first true introduction to Big Blue Nation.
It was just better for me personally, mentally, because it had been a long summer, just to take the time to reflect on everything that went on and just let my decision sink in. But I know that social media was going crazy that night. So just getting back on social media the next day, it was really cool to see my name plastered everywhere.
Was that like your first taste of Big Blue Nation?
Yeah. It was crazy. I can't say I've seen anything like it personally.
As you might imagine, Mark Pope was thrilled.
Called me that next day as soon as I had announced it. So I mean, and we had been together for the last 2 years before that. So it was just a cool moment, knowing that we had both been through those last 2 years together, especially knowing the first year wasn't great for us.
For the fourth time in his college career, Jaxson packed his bags and left Oklahoma for a new school with Astro in tow. This time felt different. Jaxson Robinson is one of 9 transfers on Mark Pope's first Kentucky team. Outside of Travis Perry, who was committed to Kentucky before John Calipari left for Arkansas, none of the players on this year's squad expected to be Wildcats. Although Jaxson didn't dream of playing for Kentucky like Perry or fellow Bluegrass native Trent Noah, he enjoyed watching the Cats growing up, especially the 2016-17 team.
There's a lot of history here. I grew up watching all the players in Kentucky. I remember watching Malik Monk and De'Aaron Fox, that group, Bam Adebayo. That was one of my favorite groups here. So just knowing that I'm wearing a jersey that they used to play in is crazy.
As the only person on the roster who had played for Pope before, Jaxson was expected to lead from the start. Fans nicknamed him the Translator and Pope Whisperer in anticipation of how he teaches teammates Pope's complex and unique system.
Everybody's put in the hours, the time, just to be able to make sure that we have the system down.
Jaxson had come into his own as a player in his final year at BYU, but at Kentucky, he was becoming a leader.
I've taken huge strides. That's definitely not something that I'm used to. I'm usually the quiet kid, so it's been really cool just to be able to figure out myself, like I said, as a leader. There's a lot of things that I can still get better at, but I think I'm well on my way.
To see him go out of his way to make sure that everyone is cohesive, everyone feels like they're part of this team, and to make connections with teammates has been huge for him.
Kentucky's game versus Duke in the Champions Classic on November 12th served as the first big test of the Mark Pope era. It was also the biggest game Jaxson had ever played in. With the eyes of the sport, including several scouts watching, Kentucky pulled off the incredible win, all without a single field goal from Jaxson, who was expected to be the Cats' top scorer this season. Jaxson was 0 of 4 from the field, including 0 of 3 from the three-point line in 27 minutes. He scored just 1 point off of a free throw. Most people would interpret that stat line as Jaxson choking under the bright lights. Not Brandy.
My mom didn't really have anything bad to say. Even though I didn't play great offensively, she knew my defense was really good. So she was proud of me for that.
Jaxson allowed just 2 points on defense all night, earning kudos from Mark Pope in the post-game press conference. He had 2 blocks, a steal, and a plus-minus of 6, despite not scoring a single field goal.
Proud. His defense during that game was phenomenal. And of course, he can't see that. He thinks my shots didn't go in. I didn't have a very good game. And I'm like, no, that's one of the best games I've seen you play. I know you can shoot the ball. I know you can score some points. It's fine. But I've never seen you get into passing lanes, get deflections, get stops on defense. That's what I think is a game changer.
Crystal was also at State Farm Arena that night. She said the game served as proof of what she's been trying to get her nephew to understand for years after her 11 years as a professional.
And just what we've watched him go through, and he just keeps climbing and scratching, and getting him just to understand that you're going to have bad games. if you play the sport long enough, you're not always going to be great every night. But on the nights that you're not great, you find other things to do.
I can't say that I didn't feel the pressure of that game. That was the biggest game of my career.
There was another significant development in Atlanta. Jaxson admitted he was frustrated after his performance, to the point he felt the need to apologize to his teammates for his body language. Even though they said it wasn't necessary, for Jaxson, it was.
I also just want to be a great teammate, and I felt like there were times where you could see my frustration, and I don't think that's acceptable as a leader, and that's what I'm trying to be. So just trying to hold myself to a high standard for not only myself, but this program and my team as a whole.
To hear him say that is something that meant so much to me, because we've thought about that, we've talked about it and talked about it and talked about it. Like, you have to be able to control your reactions to things outwardly.
Controlling your own actions is one thing. Taking accountability for them is a leap Brandy wasn't sure she would see her son take after the experiences he had early in his college career.
He left Arkansas and he was in a really hard place. His first year at BYU wasn't easy. It was a rough year for him. And I think coming through that and the support that Coach Pope had with the sports psychologists that were available to talk to, and just Jaxson kind of talking through some of those things, it's helped him to understand how important it is to talk about things when they happen, to be aware of those things, and also to make sure if you see your teammate down, hey, you need to come over there and let them know, hey, next play, let's keep going.
In the week after the Duke game, Jaxson lived in the gym, getting up shots every day before and after practice. His efforts were rewarded versus Lipscomb when he scored a season-high 20 points in just 22 minutes. When Lamont Butler and Kerr Kriisa both went down with injuries, Robinson took over at point guard, leading Kentucky to an improbable comeback versus Gonzaga.
I think that he's conquered his fear of failure and understanding failure is a part of everything you do. You have to embrace it. To become a good shooter, you got to miss a lot of shots.
That maturity is just one example of how Jaxson has grown since he left Ada, Oklahoma at the age of 17, or College Station at 18, Fayetteville at 19, and Provo at 20 and 21. While Jaxson has done the brunt of the work on his own, Crystal knows there's another person to thank.
I think Coach Pope is one of the first coach that Jackson's played for in college that leads the way. He's a gentle leader. I don't think leadership always has to be loud. It doesn't have to be intimidating. He leads those boys with love, and he teaches them about themselves, I would say. You know what I mean? He builds up their confidence, and I'm thankful that Jaxson is able to play for Mark Pope, because he's teaching him more than basketball. He's teaching him how to be an outstanding citizen, a good man. And I think that at this level, winning is such a big thing that coaches get caught up in, I got to figure out how to win, I got to figure out how to win, I got to figure out how to win, and they forget the human part of it. And I think that Mark does such a good job with the human part, with every single individual on his team.
Like his mom and his aunt, they are like his whole heart and soul. Like he is them, right? Mm-hmm. And so he's becoming what he's becoming because of them, and it's super cool to watch.
Thanks to that hard work, Jaxson is living out a dream he didn't even know he had. The same can be said for almost all of his teammates, another reason this team has quickly become beloved.
It's funny because like a couple of us have played each other in the past, even just last year in the Big 12, playing Kerr and Brandon, Ortega. It's just really cool just looking across the locker room, and he was just the enemy. And like you said, just being grateful. Like you said, we all weren't supposed to be here, but somehow, some way, we made our way to Kentucky, and that's every little kid's dream.
It's just been so incredible to watch him grow.
For Pope and Jaxson, that journey will come to an end in a matter of months, hopefully with championships in hand. For now, they're making the most of each game, practice, and prayer circle, grateful for moments that once seemed impossible.
Being able to play for a coach that's believed in me, even when I wasn't at the top. So I mean, it's been really cool just to be with a great guy, a great coach like Coach Pope.